Future value can be evaluated in cases where the start of our investment period or the start of our analysis isn't necessarily today or time zero. So basically, suppose we have a situation where here we are today and in K period. So at some point in the future is when we're going to make our investment. And we want to know how much money we'll have at an even later date in the future. Well, the equation that explains that is this one, which has a lot of subscripts and superscripts, but all it's really saying is C sub k, change the colors so I can highlight it, C sub k, which is this amount here, times 1 plus r, which we've talked about, how that's the rate per period. Every period it's going to compound and be r% more than what it was the previous period. But it was obvious when we started here and we wanted to know how much we had here that it would jump or that it would grow for t periods. And that's why we took it to the t. Here we take it to the t minus k, which is basically saying that if we start here at time k and we want to know how much we'll have here at time t, so we start at k and we want to know how much we'll have at time t, well, how many times does it grow for? T minus k. So, for example, suppose this was period 3 and this happened and we want to know how much we would have at period 8. Well, it would grow from 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8. It would grow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 periods. 8 minus 3 is 5. That's all we're saying. So let's take a look at an example. So in 3 years, we're going to invest $100. So not today, but in 3 years. And we want to know how much we'll have in 7 years. And the interest rate's 10%. Well, one of the things I like to do in these problems is the beginning of our analysis is in 3 years. That's when we're actually going to, for this particular $100. So we can retime it. You can see I actually call it retiming, where we go to where we invest the $100 and call that time 0. So if we invest the $100 in 3 years from now, and we want to know how much it'll be worth in 7 years from now, take our time machine, get out in 3 years, we jump out, we have $100, and say, hey, I want to invest it today. And we want to know how much we'll have in 7 years from today, but that's 1, 2, 3, 4 years after we get out of our time machine. So now we're looking at a situation where if we invest $100, then it has a chance to compound for 1, 2, 3, 4 years. How much will it be worth in 7 years from today? It'll be worth $146.41. $100 times 1.1 to the fourth. 7 minus 3 is 4, and hopefully you can see how if we're at 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's why it's to the fourth. If you want to do it in your financial calculator, hit apps, hit 1 and 1 to get into the TVM solver. Again, the modes are relevant. What's n? We want to know how much we'll have in 7 years from today. But as we've talked about, we're actually going to be investing in 3 years from today, so n is only going to be 4. It's the number of periods over which the money compounds. And in particular, the money is going to compound at 10% per period, and we're going to put in 100 in 3 years. We want to know how much we'll have in 7 years, 7 years from today, 3 years from today. So that means they'll have 4 years to compound, solve for FE, and get 146.41. So again, the key here is even though we want to know how much we'll have in 7 years from today, the fact that we're investing in 3 years from today means it will only be invested for 4 years. In 5 years, so your grandmother just gave you a piece of art. It's lovely. Right now it's being shown in a museum and it'll be there for 5 years. So in 5 years, that's when you're going to get this piece of art. And when you get it in 5 years, it'll be worth $12,000. So in 5 years, you'll have a piece of art worth $12,000. And it'll appreciate in value by 7% a year. So again, it's slightly different language, but this is, the return on this is 7% per year. In 5 years, you expect it to be worth 12,000. How much will it be worth 8 years from now? Well, again, take your time machine, go 5 years into the future, and what happens? You get out of your time machine and you say, aha, here's my new time zero. Hey, look, I got this wonderful piece of art that's worth 12,000. The question says, how much will it be worth in 8 years from now? Which, when we get out of our time machine, will be 1, 2, 3 years after we get out of our time machine. So we basically want to know, okay, if we have a piece of art that's going to be worth 12,000 here, how much will it be worth 3 years later? And the answer to that is 12,000 times 1.07, because that's the rate at which it's going to appreciate, which is another way of saying the return, to the third. 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 7 to 8, 3 years. 8 minus 5, 3 years. And you can see it, I hope, more graphically, and I hope the timeline helps you. You get it for 12, it grows for 1, or the value, grows by r. R can be negative, grows by 1, grows by 2, and grows by 3. That'll be 8 years from today, and it'll be worth about $14,701. If you want to do this in your financial calculator, in 5 years, the beginning of our relevant time period here, even though you're getting a piece of art, you're receiving something worth 12,000, and it may say, oh, of course it should be positive. Our analysis assumes we have a piece of art and we want to know how much it'll be worth at a certain point in time that's later in the future. So if we have it in 5 years, how do we get it? We can think about it. We had to spend 12,000 to get it. So if I spend 12,000 on this piece of art in 5 years, how much will I have in 8 years from now? Well, it's in 5 years that we would spend the 12. We want to know how much we'll have in 8. So we'll have the 3 years, n equals 3, return of 7%. So it's, we saw before, put in 12,000 and then it grows by 7, by 7, by 7%. Solve for FE, 14,752. If you spent 12,000 on a piece of art in 5 years and it appreciated in value by 7%, in 8 years from today, which would be 3 years after you bought it, you could sell it for $14,700.52. So everything we've talked about so far in this topic there's been no uncertainty. So for example, in the last problem, we knew the piece of art was going to be worth 12,000 in 5 years, and we knew the art market was going to appreciate by 7% per year. In the vast majority, if not all situations in finance, there's going to be some uncertainty. So we've assumed that there's certainty. Here's what's nice. It might sound like a complicated problem. To actually address it, it's easy. If we don't know what the actual cash flow is going to be or what the actual value is going to be, what do we use? We use the expected cash flow or the expected value. It's essentially a best guess. What do we think the value is going to be in 3 years? How much do we think we're going to get in 7? Or how much do we think we're going to need to pay in 12 years? What's our best guess? What's our expected value? Apply that, use the same tools that we've just gone over. If we don't know what the actual return or interest rate is going to be, and we almost never do, there's very, very, very few, if any, investments that have real 100% lock, stock certainty in this world. We often have some uncertainty, but we use our best guess, expected return or expected interest rate, and we apply that, and we use all the same tools and methods that we've talked about so far. And when we get to present value later, when we get to situations involving multiple cash flows, which are topics we'll cover later, we make the same assumption that if we're dealing with a case of uncertainty, we may not know exactly what something will be worth or what the return will be. So we use what we expect it to be worth, what we expect the return to be, and then apply the analysis the same way. So this example, it's like the previous one, but it's a little more realistic. In 5 years, you're going to get this art. That's when the museum's going to release it. And you don't know how much it's going to be worth. It's 5 years from now. There's unpredictability in the art market, but you expect it to be worth 12,000. And you don't know what's going to happen with the art market, but you expect this piece of art to appreciate in value by 7% a year. We can't say for certain how much it'll be worth in 8 years, but how much is it expected to be worth 8 years from now? Is it expected to be worth 8 years from now? So again, look, the analysis is identical to the problem we just did. You can see that we don't know exactly how much it'll be worth in 5 years, but our best guess is 12,000. We don't know what the actual return is going to be, but our best guess is 7%. That's our expected return. So it's 12,000 times 1.07 to the third, and we expect it to be worth 14,701. So this, in many ways, more realistic problem because we don't know how much it would be worth in 5 years, and we don't know what the art market's going to do. We use our best guess, we use those expected values, and you can see the analysis leads to the same result. That in the previous case we knew that it would be worth 14,701. Here that's what we expected. If when we get it it's not worth 12,000, or the rates, that because the art market's unpredictable, it can actually potentially be worth less. But when we use expected values, that's what we base analysis on and make our decisions on because it's the best that we have. And again, if you want to use your financial calculator, this should look familiar. You would expect in 5 years, if you wanted this art, you'd have to spend 12,000 to get it. You'd expect it would appreciate by 7%. You want to know how much you could get as cash if you sold it in 8 years from now, which is 3 years after you bought it. $14,701.